I took the 4 or 5 tips you gave in the webinar and tried to apply them as best as possible. I think I watched a couple of the like these interviews to kind of give me confidence that this had worked for other people, and I just went for it. So I took it was just under 7 weeks from when I started studying to when I actually took it.
A 98 on FAR.
Yeah, wow. I was shocked. I was shocked that I nearly fell out of my chair when I saw that result. I definitely didn't think I had done that well.
Welcome to another episode of the CPA Exam Experience podcast from SuperfastCPA. I'm Logan, and in today's episode, you're going to hear Nate talking to Scott. Now, unfortunately, I didn't get to join in this interview because I was on vacation, but I really wish I had been a part of this because honestly, Scott has an amazing story. So to start, Scott, back in 2018, was working in food service. He didn't have a college degree, and he was just doing the best he could, but a cool opportunity came along. At that food service, they asked him to come kind of help with the bookkeeping a little bit because they really liked him and they knew he didn't really want to work in food service anymore. So he was helping them with that a bit more and he liked it. That was his first intro into accounting. And then something happened that motivates a lot of people. His wife got pregnant and he decided that he needed to do more to be able to support his family. So he took his newfound learning in accounting and decided to go back to school. And he blazed through school. He did 112 credits in a little under 3 years, and after that he still had a few classes to do, and so he knocked out a few extra classes to be able to sit for the CPA exam. And then, of course, by this point, if you can imagine, he was totally exhausted, understandably, and he didn't know how he was going to be able to do the CPA exam. He had just spent the past 3+ years working to get his college degree, and now he also had to take the CPA exam. So he was trying to figure out how to do it. He saw a SuperfastCPA YouTube ad, he watched the free training webinar, and this is going to blow your mind. With just what he learned from the SuperfastCPA training webinar, he was able to pass FAR on his first try with a 98. Again, just with what he learned from our free training webinar, he got a 98 on FAR. Afterwards, he found a lot of value in what was taught in the webinar and decided to purchase the SuperfastCPA materials. But you'll see, and I think we just need to get into the interview here quick because he has great tips. He crushed the exams. He passed all 3 exams in 3 months in the 90s while working full-time. So with that, I'm sure you want to get into the interview. And just before we get into the interview, I want to give you one more reminder about the SuperfastCPA training webinar on SuperfastCPA.com. This is the same one that taught him the strategies so that he was able to pass FAR with a 98. Make sure you go check that out. The link is in the description of the podcast or of the YouTube video. And let's just dive straight in. Scott has an awesome interview for you to listen to.
So welcome to the call, Scott. I'm excited to hear this story. Just for the sake of people listening to this, your email that you sent me back in December, you just said it passed in 3 months. Well, we'll get into the whole background, but basically you crushed these exams. You passed in 3 months, scoring in the 90s on each one. So this will be, I'm sure you've got a lot of really good tips and things to share and insight for the people that listen to this. So let's just start at the beginning. When you decided to do the CPA, where were you at in your career and what made you decide to do the CPA?
Yeah, it might be helpful to actually back up a little bit farther than that even. Going all the way back to 2018, I was working in food service. I was just recently married, and I didn't like it, like a lot of people in food service. But I didn't have a college degree. I'd only done 1 year of college, and then I had dropped out several years prior. And the owner of the cafe approached me, and he was like, "Hey, would you be interested in maybe doing some kind of back office work for me? I know you don't love the food service aspect, but you're a really valuable worker. I'd love to kind of keep you involved and keep you here as long as I can." So I did. And that was my very first taste of accounting. It was very entry level. It was QuickBooks, just a lot of repetitive tasks, but I really enjoyed it. And it was the first thing I had done in several years that was kind of intellectually stimulating since I had dropped out of college. And then I did that for a couple of years. And then towards the end of 2019, my wife was pregnant, and I realized, okay, well, maybe it's time to try to make something of myself. And I've been enjoying this accounting. it seems like I've got a knack for it. I'm going to try to go back to school and go for it. So I started at the local community college in January of 2020. March of 2020 hit, kind of the whole world shut down, which was actually, I'm one of the few people that really benefited from that, because it allowed me to take a much heavier schedule load, because I didn't have to commute to school. Everything was online. And so starting in the fall of 2020, I really ramped it up. I was basically in school full time from that point until graduation. I think in the email I might have said this, but I think I took something like 112 credits in 34 months. I mean, I was just on an absolute tear. I realized when I started, if I'm doing 1 or 2 classes a semester, I'm going to be in school until I'm like 50. So I just got to buckle down. I just have to do it. Yeah, it was tough. I mean, we had our first child in July of 2020, and I was studying in the hospital and just continued going all the way through up until I graduated in May of 23.
You were still working full time doing this.
Working. Yeah,
wow.
in 20 let's see, the very end of 2020, November of 2020, I got an accounting job at a local church. And then I was still doing a little bit on the side at the cafe, just a few hours a week, helping them out. So yeah, working, going to school, a baby at home. But I was extremely motivated to get it over with. So May of 23 rolls around. I graduated. I was still a few credits shy of being able to sit for the CPA exam. So I banged out a couple quick community college courses in June. They were, those quick 3-week summer courses. Got a new job at a small public accounting firm in Chicago, and they were willing to pay for it. So I was like, I didn't really want to take any time off. I was still kind of in the studying groove and just used to a routine. So I decided to just go for it, purchase my materials. And on July 12th, I started studying. So it really took no gaps from January of 2020 until then.
Wow. So when were you, okay, so going back to just your college credits, college, I guess. When were you studying? Well, yeah. When were you studying and doing all that schoolwork, coursework?
Yeah, just in the evenings.
Okay.
Yep.
So you'd come home from work, maybe see your family for
see the family, have dinner. Yeah. My son would go to bed. I would hit the books for, however many hours each evening, 2 or 3 hours every evening.
Wow, that's awesome. And then at the same time, I guess really in a span of 4 years, less than 4 years, you finished basically started from the beginning with the education requirements and finished your CPA.
And in just under 4 years, I went from high school diploma to completing the CPA test. Still waiting on the actual license. I can't actually say I'm a licensed CPA yet.
Yeah.
But completed the test. Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. Well, congrats. Yeah, that's a crazy turnaround. So one last question so you start doing some accounting work for the cafe. I'm assuming then you weren't even thinking, or probably the CPA wasn't even on your radar.
No.
So somewhere in doing your accounting classes, you start to understand that the CPA is kind of the culmination of an accounting degree. Is that basically what happened?
Yeah, absolutely. I spoke to, when I was considering going back to school for accounting, I went and I got together with my uncle, who had been a CPA early on in his career. He then transitioned to finance later on, just to talk to him about it. He started out in Big Four, just to, see what he would recommend about going that route. And he made it pretty clear that you can have a decent career in accounting, but the CPA is really the threshold for being able to advance and make, a significant amount of money. Without it, you're kind of capped as far as you can advance and the amount of money you'll be able to make, which is not really what I wanted to hear at the time. Just the idea of going back to school while working with a kid on the way was very intimidating. But the thought that I would have to do all these years at school and then study for this big test, try to pass it, and really that would be the start, like the starting line, was really overwhelming. And I kind of put it out of my mind. I kind of decided, like, if I get it, I get it, but I'm not going to shoot for that now, because that task is too big. It's too overwhelming right now. I'm just going to focus on going back to college, getting an associate's degree. Like, that felt manageable.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess, right. One step at a time. So again, from previously, whenever that was, dropping out of college, to then just locking down and working all day and then studying 3 to 4 hours every night. Where did that ability come from, or just the motivation, to just do that out of nowhere?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say it was a miraculous gift of the Lord, if I'm honest. But it makes a difference when you're married and have a kid. There's suddenly, it really felt like my back was against the wall, and
I was just thinking that phrase. Yeah.
There was suddenly 3 mouths to feed, and kind of like failure really wasn't an option, and going slow didn't feel like much of an option either. So every night it's like, yeah, you're tired. There's a lot of people that are tired. There's a lot of people that work way harder than I was working for a lot less. So yeah, if I was single, I'm sure I would still be doing what I was doing, 5 years ago, and it wouldn't be pursuing accounting.
Yeah. No, that's kind of what I was expecting you to say, but for the sake of hearing it for the people that are going to listen to this. All right. So you finish your education, you get to where the firm you're working for is going to pay for the CPA. And then where did SuperFast CPA come in? When in your timeline did you?
Yeah, I guess
find
I kind of left that out. So I want to say it was just before I had graduated, like might have been late April, early May, or shortly after graduation. I came across one of your ads, your YouTube ads, and I didn't click skip for some reason. And I watched the whole ad, and I was like, man, this sounds like such a scam. But you caught me when you said I passed in 3 months. I was like, I gotta hear what this guy is saying, because I'm so burnt out right now, but I can't stop. Like, I'm so close to finishing. Like, I can push for 3 more months. I don't think I can push for 6. I can't push for a year, but I bet I can push for 3. So I went to the free webinar, and I was like, man, this guy is making so much sense. All right, like, do the multiple choice questions, right? Like, they're from the test. These are old test questions. This is what you're going to be seeing. Like, yeah, why wouldn't I do that, right? It made so much sense. It was so obvious, but I definitely wouldn't have studied like that, right? Everyone, you watch the lectures, you read the book, you get around to some questions. And I was like, yeah, no, everything he's saying makes sense. And he did it in 3 months. Like, I'm in. I'll do it. I'll try it.
Man, that is well, yeah, you greatly surpassed my results. My scores, I passed in 3 months, but my scores were not in the 90s. That is so let's kind of get into that. So did you just basically keep the same schedule? You were applying our strategies, but just doing it the 2 or 3 hours at night after work?
Yeah, so I took, maybe it was like 2 or 3 weeks off from actually completing all my credits to then studying. So I took a little 2 to 3 week vacation from late evenings, and then I was right back into it. So 2 to 3 hours every evening. At first I was doing closer to 2 when I first started. It wasn't until later on that I really started ramping it up more. But evenings was my go-to. You talk a lot about working in the mornings. For me, the kids are up early. I wasn't going to be able to do anything before work, and I'm more wired to be more efficient at night. The house is quiet, everyone's in bed, and I'm the type of person that when I don't understand something, it's going to bug me all day until I figure it out. So the nice thing about being in the evenings is that I didn't have that hard deadline of like, all right, I have to stop now and go to work. If I needed to work on something in an extra 20 or 30 minutes, like, I could do that.
Yeah, the big caveat with studying in the morning, and I basically, like, pretty much everyone should study in the morning, just because you had a track record of studying at night and you were doing it consistently. So if you can make that work, it really doesn't matter when you study. For most people, they're just not, at night you're tired, you're fighting off distractions, but if it works, that it really doesn't matter when you study. That's like the big caveat with me always saying you should study in the morning. So did you just kind of feel like let's go back one step. So you watched the free training, and then did you go in and watch the pro videos as well?
So the irony in all of this is that I didn't actually buy the course right away. I actually took the first exam without purchasing anything. Just I took the 4 or 5 tips you gave in the webinar and tried to apply them as best as possible. I think I watched a couple of the like these interviews to kind of give me confidence that this had worked for other people, and I just went for it. So I took it was just under 7 weeks from when I started studying to when I actually took it.
A 98 on FAR.
Yeah, wow. I was shocked. I was shocked. I nearly fell out of my chair when I saw that result. I definitely didn't think I had done that well. So the question is then, why would I buy this stuff if I had done so well with
that's my next question.
Yeah, and that's right. A lot of people are looking at this and being like, all right, 98 on FAR, 7 weeks. Why would I purchase anything? And the reason is because once I passed, I was like, wait a minute, I have a legitimate shot to finish in 2023, which I had kind of given up on based on just, I took FAR in 7 weeks, which isn't that long, but if I kept that pace, I wasn't going to be able to finish in 2023. Okay. And so the last testing date of the year was December 15th. And just with the difficulties of scheduling, the way things would fall, I knew realistically I had like a 3-month window. So basically finishing right around the 1st of December. And I was like, hey, that's what he advertised in his thing. He advertised 3 months. And I decided, basically, I'm going to throw everything at this that I can. If I have a shot to finish this before the end of the year, before all the changes come, I'm going to do it. And again, my company was very gracious and was willing to pay for the full package. So a big part of it was just the confidence of like, I'm utilizing every resource available to me. And no regrets. Like, hey, if I don't pass one of them, or it just doesn't work out that I make it in 2023, at least I tried. At least I know I gave it everything.
Yeah. So again, though, from studying and getting a 98 on your own, or I mean, with just your main review course, what did getting our package add, if anything, to your process?
I actually wrote some things down here. There was a few things. One of them was the spreadsheet method for working through the problems kind of systematically and keeping a record of what you had done. That was really big. That was actually most helpful for BEC. A lot of those problems are calculations. Understanding the formulas, being able to implement the formulas, and then being able to like see my work over time was really useful. And I wouldn't have thought to do it that way. Probably like most people, I would have just had like a pad of paper and just would have been scribbling on it as I went, and then throwing the sheets away as they filled up. So that was a big thing. The kind of an underrated key was the note cards tip about not making like a flashcard for every little definition or every little thing that would conveniently go on a flashcard. Actually being disciplined and only writing down the things that you're really struggling with or that are kind of imperative to memorize, like the COSO internal control framework, right? There's a bunch of points, and they, there's like the main ideas and then kind of descriptions of each. Like putting those on a note card and making sure I was always flipping through that and memorizing that and not wasting my time on every little formula that came by that, frankly, I knew anyway, and putting it on a note card would have just been to kind of make myself feel good, like, oh, I know all these. Yeah. But would have then distracted me from learning the things that I really needed to focus on. There was a couple other things. The audio notes. The audio notes was huge because I would listen to those to and from work every day, which was over an hour in the car of what would have been kind of just like wasted time. But it was like basically a free extra hour plus of studying over the course of those 3 months. So that was big.
Okay. Yeah. The flashcard thing. Well, I can tell you watched the pro course and really understood everything that was in there. Because I guess the basic version of those 2 tips would be like work out the problems on a spreadsheet, but there's a lot more nuance to it than that. So you're talking about it's kind of like a 3-hour long video in the pro course, right? The planting the seeds, where I go through an entire lesson just doing it.
Okay. Yep, absolutely.
And then the flashcards thing is, the tip isn't just make your own flashcards. Again, there's more nuance to that. You kind of go through new lessons, new material. A lot of it's going to fall into place, like you said. And it's kind of so were you basically waiting until you were doing re-review sets and you would miss something for the second, third, fourth time?
Yeah, I typically didn't even start making any flashcards until pretty deep into the studying, when I was doing a lot of re-review. Again, there was the occasional thing where it was like, I can tell this is a major thing that is not easy to memorize quickly, and I'm going to just need to be seeing it over and over. So those things I would make flashcards for kind of right away, but the vast majority of the cards didn't get made until pretty late. Studying for each test.
And I have several. Try to remember this, but back on the flashcards first. Were you making digital flashcards with like Brainscape, or were you making handwritten ones?
Yeah, handwriting. Me personally, I think writing down, I'm sure there's studies about, actually writing things down and reading your own writing that kind of sticks it in your brain better. But I've always preferred the physical, holding them, being able to carry them around with me.
Okay. And then, so when would you review your flashcards? Once you started making them for a section, when would you use them and review them?
Yeah, I was doing a lot of review, primarily on the weekends. Once I was kind of done working through a full, all of the units of a test, and I was starting to do more just review, I would kind of incorporate them into my nightly sessions. But a lot of the times on the weekend, when I was just tired of sitting and staring at the computer and trying to work through multiple choice questions, I would, I'd go to a different room of the house and I'd just start going through my flashcards.
Okay. So let's go back to, again, a 98 on FAR we're using Becker, I'm guessing.
Yep.
What was your process from start to finish for a topic? You go to a new topic in Becker, you're sitting down for your nighttime study session. What were you actually doing?
Yeah, I wrote that down too. So in the evenings, so my primary study session in the evenings, from the get-go, and I was very thankful for this, like I never was enticed by the lectures. I don't even think I watched like a complete 30 minutes. Again, doing the free webinar, getting the pro course later, hearing kind of testimonials, it was like, okay, these things aren't helpful. And even the couple rare times when I didn't understand something that felt like it was important and I went back to see how the lecture addressed it, often it didn't, or it wasn't helpful. So I was straight to the multiple choice questions kind of right off the bat, especially initially with FAR. At some point, I realized that Becker actually has this really nice feature where they give an outline of each module. And that was actually really helpful because they basically highlight all of the main points and it tracks in order of the questions that you're going to see. So usually I began starting every evening by reading through that outline, getting an understanding of what I was going to be seeing, noting the things that I knew I'd covered in school, things that were totally new that I'd never seen before, and just kind of prepping myself for what I was going to see in the questions. And then jumping straight into the questions, I would do every single question. And as I would go, I would write down, usually in kind of a brief summary form, I would write down the answer to every question in just a notebook. And often you'd get, especially for kind of a major topic, you could get anywhere from 4 to 10 questions dealing with that one singular topic. And so if I'd write down 2 or 3 sentences just kind of explaining the point to me, then when I would do my re-review during the day, which we can get to, I would have just straight up kind of bullets of all of the answers and all of the major points of the MCQs. So I wouldn't skip any questions. I'd work through all of them, and it would just kind of depend on how long the modules were, how difficult they were. That would determine how far I'd get in a given evening, my kind of 2 to 3 hour study session.
Okay. So when you say you're writing down the answers, you're trying to extract the key takeaway. You weren't just copying word for word.
Yeah, right, exactly. Not just copying the solution, but trying to understand and put in my own words, really, why is this answer correct? And it was one of the great features probably on every study program, certainly Becker, where they give you like a paragraph explanation with every single question. So yeah, just reading the answer, understanding why it was the answer, writing a couple notes, right on to the next one.
Yeah. And then the other thing you said was that you would notice that for a group of questions on a topic, those kind of key takeaways or the crux of the question really funneled down to like 3 or 4 key ideas per lesson. Is that what you were saying?
And again, that's why the outline was so helpful, because sometimes I could just cross-reference the questions and see, okay, how is Becker distilling this in 1 or 2 sentences, and compare it to what I had written down. Being like, okay, am I understanding what they're saying? Does it match with what I'm saying? And
Okay.
it was really nice. It was a great feature that I think people should utilize if they're using Becker.
Yeah, I've never heard someone say that. And I don't spend a ton of time like in Becker, trying to figure it out. But that is a good tip, really good tip. I don't know, 8 out of 10 people are using Becker. So
yeah.
So you mentioned re-review during the day. So during FAR, even that first exam, what were you doing for that?
Yeah. So if I remember correctly, you would your strategy was 90 minutes of new material, 30 minutes of re-review. You do like 30 MCQs of the material you had covered up to that point. And so because my timeline was so condensed, basically any time I had in the evening was dedicated to new material, period. And then every day at work on my lunch break, I would sit, because I'd take 30 minutes and I'd do 30 MCQs, and I'd have my notebook open with all the things I had written down. As I got questions wrong, I could look, okay, did I write this down? Is this new to me? Did I just forget? So constantly reviewing both things, the questions and what I had written down. And if I was really struggling with a particular unit, sometimes I would do like 20 questions, just that unit, or 1 or 2 units, and then another 20, all of the other units that I had covered to date. So trying to get a little bit more focus on the difficult areas, but also not neglecting just constant stream of everything I'd seen.
Yeah, that's a perfect kind of what I recommend now, or at least when someone's kind of in their final review, is to kind of alternate between maybe do a set strictly on one topic that you're kind of struggling with, then go the next set, make it fully cumulative.
Yeah.
And you can kind of filter through your weaker topics. So it sounds like you kind of just figured that out.
Yeah, it was when you get to a point where you've covered so many units and there's so many questions that you can do 30, 40 questions and maybe see 1 or even 0 from multiple modules. And again, that's fine. If you're doing it every day, you're eventually going to see this stuff. But if there's a particular area that you're weak in, you want to be a little bit more focused and trying to iron that out before you get to the final review, and you're scrambling to like, oh wait, how does this work again?
Yep, exactly. Yeah, so I really like that strategy you just explained. So you go through the questions for a topic, you are distilling down the key takeaway from each question, and then you're kind of comparing it with Becker's outline. Then you have this notebook when you do your re-review set where anything you missed, you kind of re-reference your own notebook for those question types. So I'm guessing you continued that process through the remaining 3.
Yep. I've got, 2 full notebooks of all my notes from all 4 tests.
Okay. So I guess how would you explain, what did making flashcards add to that? Because that already sounds like a really effective process.
Yeah, the flashcards, when, FAR had like 10 units and, it's like 60 plus modules in Becker. So the notebook, it gets huge. And so it was the way to take all of that information and then again, hack it down even more to a much more focused kind of set of things that I need to learn
Gotcha.
and look at. And again, when I'm doing the notebook, I'm writing absolutely everything down. So a lot of it is pretty filler. Even things that I knew I was writing down. So the flashcards were a way to be like, okay, of everything I've written down, these are the most important things to memorize. I have to make sure I know these backwards and forwards. These are the things that I've struggled with. I want to keep seeing these, a dozen times now before I actually sit and take the test.
Yeah, that makes sense. I guess that's the way I describe the flashcard process. Ideally, there's two buckets. Bucket one is stuff that just falls into place in your mind by you just kind of doing the studying, MCQs, practice sims. And then there's everything else. So if you're making flashcards on the things you really struggle with, your flashcards contain your weakest areas. But if you've been reviewing them, they become part of bucket number one. Hypothetically, that's kind of how it should work.
Right.
And that's, basically what you described. So I guess, again, almost the same question, because you mentioned after watching the pro videos, the spreadsheet thing. I guess to me, it sounds similar to what you're doing with your notebook. So what would you say that added to what you had done in FAR, like using a spreadsheet?
The spreadsheet was important for all the computational problems that BEC had, a lot of the cost accounting stuff, things that I could write, I could and would write down the actual formula in the notebook and then potentially later on a note card if I needed to keep emphasizing it. But actually doing all of the computations, I didn't want to kind of fill up my notebook with just math haphazardly everywhere. So the spreadsheet gave things order. And it's nice because, Excel does the actual calculations for you right there. And then kind of like you did, a tab, just new tabs as I progressed through the sections. And I found doing it that way, I didn't really have to go back and look at much. Once you kind of find the rhythm and you understand how to extract the pieces from the question that you need and how they fit into the equation, everything kind of falls into place. And by the end, you just know how to do it. And you're not surprised by the different kind of formats of the questions. Yeah.
Let's see. So how about the audit exam where you didn't work in audit? If someone doesn't work in audit and maybe the two auditing classes that were required was possibly 3 or 4 years ago, did you find audit especially difficult, or what was your experience with audit?
Yeah, audit wasn't so bad. It was my lowest score, so there's something to that. But yeah, right. But it was, ironically, it was also the test I walked out of most confident. So, go ahead and try to figure that out. But to me, audit, it makes a lot of sense. I think reg was probably the most difficult as far as the study process because, I don't know, intuition just didn't seem to get me very far with reg, with tax stuff compared to audit, just understanding like audit evidence and what's superior audit evidence. And that's like more how I think again, and like financial accounting and reporting, that's just kind of more up my alley naturally. I'm kind of more wired that way. So yeah, audit, I don't remember anything particularly about audit. I was a little intimidated by the simulations going in because it's like that higher level type of question that you're going to see. But as far as the actual simulations on the test, nothing stood out as particularly difficult. There was definitely other tests that to me had harder simulations.
Yeah. When it comes to audit, I tell people a lot, try to think about what the words mean. Like, I don't know, that sounds dumb, but it does make so much logical sense the way that an audit works. It just, like you said, testing controls, the assertions, it makes a lot of logical sense if you're just thinking about what is the substance of what we're trying to do here.
Yeah, critical thinking is kind of most key there. And actually, probably the more you get away from memorization for most things, you're actually maybe better served, because then when you see something that you don't quite recognize, and you're like, oh, I didn't learn this, I didn't memorize this, you're less likely to panic if you're like, oh, I just need to think through this like I've done with all of these other problems in my study sessions.
Yep. So you mentioned the Sims, and that's one thing I was going to ask about. It sounds like your process was, at least the first few weeks, it sounds like, for each exam were just pretty much MCQs. So when did you do or use practice Sims?
Yeah, I was not really sure how to approach the Sims for FAR. Again, I hadn't bought the pro course, and I don't remember it being talked about that much in the free webinar. But I think it was actually in an email from you. I was like, oh, that makes a lot of sense. And you were talking about, how it's 50% MCQs and Sims as far as your grade. And so you want to allot roughly equal amounts of time. And so the benefit of emphasizing MCQs during the studying is that you learn to work through them very quickly, and you're building up all the base knowledge for actually completing the sim. Whereas if you're trying to incorporate sims right from the get-go or focusing on them, you don't have that quick knowledge that you've gained over time from doing the MCQs, and it's just going to be a lot slower, a lot more painful. So I pretty much didn't touch sims until I had worked through the entire course for each test.
Okay.
There were some exceptions, and we can talk about the exceptions, but as a general rule, I would save those until basically the last week before I would test, or at least like the last 10 days. And then once I had been through all the material, my 2 to 3 hours in the evening was totally re-review. So I'd do like 50 MCQs and 10 sims. And probably the biggest gift you gave me in that email was, as soon as you get stuck, just get the answer, right? See how they work through it. Don't spin your wheels. Like, there's nothing to be gained by guessing and wasting time. So anytime I got stuck, I'd look at the answer. If it was like, oh, of course, how did I miss that? Then I'd just go on to the next one. If it was like, oh, I really don't understand this, I would keep reworking it until it made sense and I could do it. And I didn't worry too much about doing all of the sims. I mean, there's so many. For me, it was more like, okay, have I seen a wide variety, and have I done well across the variety to the point where I'm consistently getting them entirely right, or very close. Again, very important to do all of the MCQs for me. That really was like the bedrock of the knowledge. But if I could get in a good rhythm of knocking out the sims, it wasn't imperative that I did all of them.
Yeah. It sounds, that's basically it. Half the battle with the sims isn't really to do with the sims. It's getting really good at and proficient at MCQs so that you have time to just sit there and make sense of all the exhibits. You'll see a few sims that just seem really difficult when you first open it up, and the time to open the exhibits probably multiple times each as you're trying to connect the dots. But eventually you get to where, okay, I see what's going on here. They're not, I mean, some can be difficult. I remember a reg sim that was just...
The reg sims were the hardest for me, for sure.
Yeah, there was a crazy sim that I got.
No, the intimidation factor is one of the biggest things. I mean, they look, even a relatively mild one can look so daunting. How can I possibly pour through all of this information? Where am I going to find these answers? I don't even really understand what the question is asking me. But you start opening the things, you start reading, and sometimes it's like, oh, actually, this is very obvious. So just being familiar with the formatting can be a big step towards succeeding. Basically, allowing yourself to think and not panic.
Yeah. Yes, and that's a lot easier if you're not... So not panicking is a lot easier if you have tons of time. But if you have an hour left for all the sims, then you're trying not to freak out while you're trying to make sense of, so what you mentioned, just submitting a sim, if you're like a practice sim, if you're stuck, to just see instead of staring at it or spending 20 minutes trying to fill it out only to find out you did it wrong anyways.
Right.
Would you... did you do that with the MCQs as well? I guess basically could you describe again, let's say you're going into a calculation heavy topic on BEC that you haven't seen before. What was your actual process of using the MCQs to learn how to do them and learn that lesson or that topic?
Yeah, right. Right off the bat, generally, I'm just kind of just going in and clicking answers, right? Like
Yep.
I had just finished my accounting degree. So a lot of this stuff I had taken within the last 18 months. So nothing was like so far back in the past. But there was a lot of material across the tests that never even entered into the curriculum at school. So it doesn't matter how long ago you got your accounting degree, like there's some stuff we've never seen. And so I went in, and if I knew the answer, great. I knew the answer. If I had no idea, no, I didn't worry about it. Just pick an answer, see what the answer is, see why, write it down, move on. And with the calculation heavy ones, typically for 2 or 3 of them, yeah, I'm just going to pick an answer. And then once I understand the formula and, okay, when they ask the question this way, the formula still applies, even though it looks pretty different than the previous one. Okay, and then I get a third or a fourth question. Now I'm going to sit down and actually try to compute it and pick an answer based on, what I get.
So you would, that's what I was wondering. So at some point you reperform. So a calculation problem is in front of you. You don't know how to do it. So you just hit submit, make sense of the solution.
Mm-hmm.
And then would you just try to then reperform it like on your spreadsheet to see if you can go through the steps and get to the right answer on your own?
It would depend. If after understanding the formula needed, if it was a pretty straightforward problem, often I would just go on to the next one because I'm like, I'm going to see a handful more of these, most likely.
Yeah.
No need to, and I'm like, I'm comfortable with this one. I know how they got the answer. I know I can do it. I'm not going to waste my time. And again, when you understand the re-review, it's like, I'm probably going to see this particular question like 6 times over the next 4, 5, 8 weeks, however long you're studying.
Yeah. Yeah, that's all true. And then what about you kind of mentioned maybe a week. What was your final review? How long would you leave for that? And what did you do during your final review?
Yeah, final review. I tried generally to schedule an exam like right after a weekend, a Monday or a Tuesday, which I know is one of the things you recommended. And that was really helpful, being able just to, just have a 1 or 2 days totally free to focus, to cram, was really helpful. I ran into some trouble with scheduling at the end of any kind of test window, right? Everyone's trying to schedule because they want their scores back as soon as possible. And so that was a little difficult. The first test I took, I had to go all the way to Indiana. But fortunately, the next 3 I was able to take downtown Chicago, and the scheduling worked out where typically I had a weekend right before. And it was just a lot of cramming, usually like 100 or 200 MCQs over the course of 2 or 3 days, and kind of as many sims as I could stomach, trying to cover every unit, going through the flashcards at least 2 to 3 times over those days. If I could like extend that review for several days, and it wasn't always possible based on, again, just the constrained timeline, but if I could spread it out over 4 or 5 days, I would do not just the simulation exams at the end of Becker, but like the kind of midterm exams they give you. Those were actually really nice because it was more focused on 3 or 4 units. And so it was, when you're covering 10 units in a simulated exam, you might only see 1 or 2 questions from an area that you're not particularly strong in. And you think, hey, I'm really ready. But when you do those more focused midterms and more, the question density is more on maybe an area you're uncomfortable with, it really helps to expose the weaknesses. So I really liked those. And I would try to incorporate all of those tests at some point in my re-review. For some of the tests, I took those midterms kind of as I finished those units. I didn't save them until the very end. For others, I would do both the simulation exams and those midterms in that final 3 to 4 day window.
Okay. Man, I had a good question there about something you said. But the other thing I was going to ask is, so after your 4 years of essentially studying every night for 2, 3, 4 hours. And now that you're done with school and the CPA, does life just feel really easy?
I was hoping it would, and then it's right into busy season, so still working in the evenings often.
Okay.
But it's great, just the being able to kind of be home, to be present, to not feel like my attention is being pulled in, different ways all the time, and it's like I'm never gonna have to take it again. What a wonderful thing. It's done. I don't have to worry about any changes. I'm in the clear. Yeah, I mean that relief. Sometimes I'll still just think. I'll sit down and I'll just think about it and think about all of those evenings for years.
Yeah.
And now it's like, if I want to go to bed early, I'll go to bed early.
Yeah, that is man, that is awesome. Did you have any, did you just kind of swear off all your hobbies or watching series? Just,
Yep.
Nothing through those 3 or 4 years.
Nothing. I had, and so I'm probably the worst person on here as far as the like, pass the CPA exam and don't use your social life. I mean, I had lost my social life years ago, and wasn't interested in trying to get it back before passing this test. So yeah, there really wasn't any free time. Sleep, work,
Yeah.
study. Sometimes I'd eat.
Right. But yeah. But what you were able to do in 3 to 4 years, because of that, it's just, I think a lot of people would say they would trade, take that cost to get that, but then people actually doing that is a different thing. I think it's kind of rare. And I asked you this in the beginning, but just the drive to do that is, I don't know. I keep wanting to ask, like, how did you, like, what were you thinking consciously to just sit down and do that each night? Was it just like you said, kind of the commitment? This needs to happen because I'm this far down the path, or
yeah,
I don't know.
I think, and this isn't really a very inspiring way to say it, but like the fear was the boogeyman. The idea of like I could get so close and not quite get across the finish line was enough to keep me up, an extra hour, 2 hours every night, because I knew that if I would tell myself, like, if you go to bed now and you don't have this kind of figured out in your mind and you don't cover what you're hoping to cover, like maybe that'll be the difference. And maybe you won't, finish because you decided to kind of go easy this late in the game, right? This close to the finish line, you decide to start jogging and not sprinting. Again, that's not very motivational. That's not very inspiring. But it worked. It was enough to get me across the finish line against all odds.
Yeah. Well, that kind of goes with something you said earlier, that 2 ideas that really resonated, or that I would have all the time. First, you mentioned, so after FAR, your main, this recording thing does that. If I like put a thumbs up, it does a little cartoon. I don't know what that is. The idea of, I want every possible resource, because I've already committed years of my life, thousands of dollars, especially when you consider your college degree. Like, I want every advantage to make sure I pass these and just get this over with. So that was my same thing. So, because I bought several study tools in addition to my review course when I was studying, specifically to get stuff on my phone. And then that goes into the second idea of what you just said. I would think that all the time. I would, like, this little mini quiz literally could be the difference of me passing and failing, or every little mini study session or morning session, full study session for that matter. So, like, yeah, I never took days off when I was studying. As soon as I took a section, I would study the next morning for the next one. I just had that same mindset of, if I have a chance to like study a little bit right now, that could be the difference.
Yeah. And it really is the difference when you add it up over weeks. Like, the idea of, man, I just want to relax and eat my lunch and not look at these questions. Like, can I go one day without looking at these questions? And you do that just a handful of times, and suddenly you've missed a chance to review 150 questions.
Yep.
That's a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Or the I don't know, the phone thing. Like I use my phone relentlessly just because when I started working at the firm, the first few weeks, I would kind of read the entirety of ESPN several times throughout the day, like
Hmm.
in these 5-minute chunks. And it finally dawned on me, like that's probably 2, 3, I don't know, 4 hours of studying each day.
Hmm.
And that was before you got the screen time reports on
Yeah.
uh,
On your
that tell
iPhone.
you,
Yeah.
yeah, like you found 6 hours a day to waste on your phone somehow. Um, anyways, would you, besides the audio notes, because you mentioned those, would
Mhm.
you do little mini sessions from your phone during the day?
I would occasionally do the mini quizzes. I'm pretty good about not being on my phone a lot. I'm not on any social media, so like there's just not a tendency or a habit for me to scroll. And
Mhm.
again, I had given up my social life years before. It's not like people were texting me or trying to make plans with me or anything like that. So, texting my wife a couple times throughout the day.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one thing. Like I remember you saying that and be like, oh yeah, that's kind of brilliant. It's like so many people, and myself included, like we are on our phones all the time. Might as well generate some productivity with that. But for me, I was pretty disciplined about doing my re-review at lunch, doing my hours in the evening, and because I just wasn't on my phone that much, I didn't do a whole lot of those like
Yeah.
5 question or 3 question mini quizzes. I did do
Yeah.
some.
But mainly the audios, which,
Yeah,
like you
audios
said,
every day. Uh-huh.
yeah. Yeah, the audios are just, I mean, even now, anything I want to learn, you can get an audiobook. There's podcasts about it. Audio is such a helpful medium because you can be doing other things.
Yep, agreed.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I had an hour 15 in the car every single day, and suddenly it went from oh, like I wish I had this as study time to I do have it as study time.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, man, we kind of went through everything, but this will be a very, very helpful episode. And hopefully, I mean, basically your approach was there was all the strategies, but just there's no excuses. This is your focus besides work. And just like you said, giving yourself every possible advantage in terms of the materials you had, but also just taking advantage of all the possible time. Like if you're committed to taking these exams, why would you waste time or, chip away at your chances of passing when you can be increasing your chances of passing? So yeah, I just really agree with that whole mindset. And I think it just makes it so much easier to just accept that this is what it's going to be until I'm done.
Yeah,
So,
and it's not magic, right? Like 3 months, it might sound like magic. It's like, hey, how did you do that? But when you actually see it put into practice day after day, it's like, no, it's a lot of hard work. But the difference between super fast CPA and what most people are doing is like, hey, get more bang for your buck. You're going to be persevering. You're going to need grit, regardless if you do it in 3 months or 18 months. It's going to be hard. Like get some return on your investment, and I think that's the key. It's like there was so little wasted time doing it this way.
yeah, yeah. And I was going to add that just as you described your approach, it was very strategic. You're getting straight to the heart of what's important. These are the questions. Can I extract the key takeaway? Like what really is this question hinging on? You're
Mm-hmm.
making notes on those. I mean, I won't re-describe the entire process, but if something really is a struggle, you make a flashcard on it. Then you're committing that to memory and you're understanding through reviewing it. Yeah, it's just I mean, it worked really well. So let's so the last question I always ask is, I'm sure we've already covered it in different ways, but what would be your top 3 tips to someone that's still trying to figure out their own study process?
The first thing is always like decide that you want it. Decide that you want it. I think that's true with absolutely anything in life. Like you want to make a career change. Like how bad do you want to make a career change? You want to become a good basketball player? How badly, right? As soon as you decide that you want something, you're willing to make sacrifices um, and put in the work to get there. So that's baseline for anything. Decide that you want it. Um, And then as far as practical strategies, skip the lectures. Don't watch the lectures. You're not going to get anything out of the lectures. And do your re-review. I think everyone's going to figure out little tips and tricks that work for them. But if you're making sure that you're seeing this information day after day after day after day, it's going to stick way better than the person that sees it once and circles back 5 weeks later and tries to review it.
Yep.
Yeah, and get to the heart. Like these questions that Becker has or Gleim or whoever, they didn't just make them up, right? These are old test questions. People sat at a CPA test and answered these questions, right? So you're going to get something very similar. Be good at them. Be good at taking the test, so to speak.
Yeah. That's one of those things that, I don't know, I think sounds funny maybe to someone just starting, but you can get good at. Every part of this process is like a skill. You can get good at answering questions. There's your practical knowledge of the material, but there's also a lot of nuance to just answering thousands of questions over 5 to 6 weeks. You just kind of learn these patterns, or you just get good at it.
Yeah, and it's not like taking this test and passing it doesn't mean that suddenly you can fill out a complicated business tax return, or that suddenly you can just go audit a business. It really is a skill unto itself, right? Like somebody can be really good at auditing and go fail the audit section of the CPA exam, and somebody could do extremely well on the auditing section and not have a clue how to actually audit when they have to sit down and do the thing. So it is a skill unto itself. Work on the actual skill. You'll get a job that will teach you how to do the job, right? So it might help to kind of differentiate those two things in your mind. This is taking a test. Like, learn how to take the test.
Yeah, that's great. Awesome. Well, yeah, I appreciate you doing the call, Scott. That was awesome to hear the full version of your story behind that email. When I got your email, I was like, holy cow, this guy crushed these exams. 3 months in the 90s. So I'm glad you found the webinar and that it helped, sent you down the path, and that eventually you got the study tools and everything. But yeah, congrats on what you accomplished the last 4 years.
Yeah, and thanks so much. I'm happy to give back, because it was, to me, there's no question, it was the difference maker between. I would still be studying now, no question, if I hadn't come across this.
Yeah, that's cool. That's awesome to hear.
All right, that was the interview with Scott. Again, I wish I could have been a part of it. I wish I wasn't on vacation just for this interview. He had an amazing story. He did amazing on the exams, and I love his work ethic. That's something that I really admired about him in this interview, was that it was all or nothing. He felt like he had his back against the wall, and he knew he had to get these things done, and he did it. He put in the work. He was able to pass his CPA exams in 3 months, all in the 90s. And again, he was working full-time, had a baby, and it was just amazing to see what he did and how he did that. I'm sure you learned a lot, and you're going to apply some of what you learned from his interview after this. If you liked the interview with Scott, make sure to leave a rating in your favorite podcast app, or like and comment on the YouTube video. Just remember, this podcast is the best free training resource out there for CPA exam candidates. So make sure you share it, and make sure you listen to the other episodes, because you'll learn a lot just by listening for free to this podcast. With that, we'll close out. Thanks for watching or listening, and we'll see you in the next episode.